And I seen it on the back of his boat, and I'm like, well, what's the deal with that? And he told me, and I'm like, oh my God. That's insane. Then all of a sudden the floodgates opened up. They were running 2, sometimes 3 off the back of the boat, and then they were running 2, sometimes 3 off the front of the boat. Social media, you couldn't go anywhere without hearing people complain about it or at least talk about it.
Can you just explain like the changes that they made this year? For the people that just bought forward-facing sonar and haven't used it, what are some of those things that people will commonly do wrong?
Well, there's several of them.
We got a great episode for you here today. We are joined by SCHEELS Pro Staff and Bass Elite Series angler Pat Schlapper. We're talking forward-facing sonar, the changes for the season this year, just some really good, helpful, insightful tips, and then closing it out with a little bit of hunting talk. All right, we've got Pat Schlapper with us today, live on location in Florida, hanging out in his truck. Pat, how you doing today?
I'm doing good. The weather's was about 70 degrees down here. When I left Wisconsin a few days ago, it was -3. So that feels a little bit better than back home. So yeah, down on the St. Johns River, kind of snooping around and trying to catch a few bass.
So you are in like the pre-fishing stages of the series, or what's going on exactly? What brings you down to Florida?
Yeah, so basically we have a 30-day or a 28-day cutoff period where we can't be on the water before the tournament. And this week on the St. Johns, the last day I can fish is Sunday. So I'm just getting a few days in out here. And then the next tournament is on Okeechobee. So I'm leaving to go to Lake Okeechobee right after this for the last week of practice. And then I'm going to North Carolina to practice. And then I'll come back to Florida for a couple weeks and hang out and just fish for fun and do whatever I want to do. Cause I'm not driving back to Wisconsin.
Yeah. That'd be a bit of a hike, especially when you got all the gear and the RV and stuff down there.
Yeah. You get a camper and a boat and, you start driving that kind of stuff around in that really cold weather and icy roads, snow. It's just every year I cross my fingers that I get down here safe. And then once I'm down here for this first stretch, I don't go home until after the first 2 tournaments. So it's a long stretch to be away, from my wife and my dog. But it's too far of a drive to come down and then drive back there. It's 23 hours one way. So that's just, it's just not practical to come all the way down and drive back and then drive all the way back down. So I just stay down here for a while.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. So what is your typical off season like, in between like your last tournament versus where you're at right now?
So basically our season goes from about January through the end of August. And then once the season's done, I'll fish a few local tournaments. I usually have to sell a boat, get a new boat, completely rig the boat. And then, I worked at SCHEELS in the off season quite a bit up until this last year. And then I didn't go back because I had so much other stuff going on and I kind of liked my time off. I spent a lot of time in the woods with my black lab, spent some time deer hunting. And then you got a lot of the business stuff, you've got contact sponsors and, see who's going to stay with you and maybe drum up some new sponsors. And then it's prep. I mean, there's a lot of work to do when you got a camper and a boat, all your tackle, get all your tackle organized. Cause it's always a mess at the end of the season. So I do have some downtime, but I keep pretty dang busy, in our off season. I mean, there's a lot going on.
Yeah, I'm sure. Can you talk to us a little bit about your boat setup this year? What are you running for your boat, motor, electronics, all that sort of thing?
So I'm running another Skeeter FXR21. This will be, I think, the fourth FXR21 that I've had with a 250 Yamaha SHO motor. And then I'll have 2 power pole shallow water anchors on the back, and they make one that has one pump that runs both of the poles now, which is really cool. It saves a lot of space. And then I will have 3 Humminbird Apex 13s, 2 on the dash one up front, and then I've got a 16-inch Garmin up front also, all on Beatdown Outdoors mounts. Minn Kota Quest trolling motor, which is, I don't know if you've run one of them yet, but they're unbelievable. They're so awesome. And then of course the Humminbird 360. That's just something that you don't hear about as much anymore with forward facing sonar, but that Mega 360 is I couldn't go without it. I use it so much. So that's kind of the basic rundown of the boat. Similar setup to last year, but with some of the limitations. Last year I had 6 graphs on the boat. I had 4 live scope transducers. This year we can only have 1 live scope transducer, and we can only have 55 total inches of screen.
Oh,
so you can
interesting.
do that so you can do that however you want it. But it just has to fall within those parameters of 50. So I have the 313s and the 116s, so that puts me right at 55 inches. And honestly, I like it. Last year it was awesome. I had a great setup, but there's so much going on. And you run that much stuff. Even I run Norsk lithium batteries, which are, bulletproof, but you run all that stuff and you're just asking for trouble. Mm-hmm. You're asking to break stuff. So
yeah, that turns into a crazy complex system when you're rolling across the water at 70 miles an hour.
It was insane, and it's just like, I'm all about like putting whatever you want on your boat. I mean, I like doing cool stuff. I've always been on, like, as far as technology in the fishing world, I've always been on the front edge of it, mostly because I worked at SCHEELS and I had maybe access to it before some people, and I knew a lot more about it because of our training. Like, I knew what a lot of stuff would do before the general public would. Anything else technology-wise, computers or any of that, that's not my area, but fishing, I have always been on the cutting edge of it. So I'm all about like having all the technologies, but man, I'm kind of happy that we're just back to what I would call a fairly standard setup. Now it's still a lot of graphs in just different technologies, but compared to what we were seeing last year, it's a fairly simplistic setup compared to what we were running. So I'm really happy with the new rule that they came up with. I think they did a good job.
Okay. Yeah. I think there's been a lot of confusion about there and then talk, not everyone really knowing what's going on. So can you just explain like the changes that they made this year for the rules and regulations and how it's different from last year?
Yeah. So basically last year it was a free for all. I mean, you could do whatever you wanted, and it spawned primarily from a couple of the Japanese anglers in the previous season. They had kind of kept it under wraps what they were doing. They were running live transducers off the back of the boat, 2, sometimes 3 off the back of the boat. And then they were running 2, sometimes 3 off the front of the boat. And they didn't, I kind of had a little bit of inside info on it because I'm friends with Kenta Kimura. Mm-hmm. And I seen it on the back of his boat, and I'm like, what's the deal with that? And he told me, and I'm like, oh my God, that's insane. So once people kind of seen, Taku Ito and Koyu Fujita kind of dominating some of those forward-facing sonar tournaments, then all of a sudden the floodgates opened up last year. And then everybody was running, not everybody, but a lot of people were running 2 forward-facing sonar transducers off the back of the boat, and then 2 or 3 off the front of the boat. And then they were running those giant 22-inch screens, and it was just insanity. Like, people would have, Brian Schmidt had 4 12-inch screens on his dash. Like, that's it was wild. Like a cockpit. Yeah, it was insane. And then 3, sometimes 4 up front. So it was like an arms race, right? Like, people put the stuff on there just because they felt like they had to. And that, I wouldn't say that's what I did, because like I said, I could see the benefits of having them on the back and having 2 on the front on the trolling motor, 1 that's dedicated for perspective, 1 that's dedicated for forward. I do miss that. but it kind of got ridiculous. And
Mm-hmm.
that's part of what started kind of the feud amongst anglers and viewers. You've seen it all over. Social media, you couldn't go anywhere on social media without hearing people complain about it or at least talk about it. So now this year, it's just 55 total inches of screen, however you want to do it. One live transducer that can only be on the trolling motor. You can't run the LVS 62 from Garmin, which is the saltwater transducer. You can't run that. You can't run them off the back of the boat. You can't run the power brakes, which I don't know how familiar you are with them. They're like the trolling motor deals you put on your power pole or your Raptors to
Okay.
make you be able to back up. That was a big thing last year too. So you can't run that. So it simplified it. Now there's a standard. If you don't, you can't have these outlandish setups. So that's kind of a basic rundown of the major rules change with just technology in general.
Okay. So the Humminbird 360, that does not fall into the category of live, right?
Nope. You can still run that, which is good because it's not live. A lot of people that don't necessarily understand the technologies but like to talk about it like they know. 360 is not a live forward-facing sonar module. It does see in front of the boat, but it just basically it paints a picture, a still picture. It's not real time, so that's still fine. I can't utilize 360 like I can a forward-facing sonar transducer.
Yeah,
they work hand in hand, but it's not the same technology.
You're not going to like see your bait on there. And it's very similar to like a side scan, except you get 360 degrees instead of just what's behind you. Correct?
Exactly. So basically what I would always tell people, whether I'm explaining it to them, talking fishing or, when I was selling them at SCHEELS, side imaging is for when you're moving. When you're out actively searching for stuff, 360 gives you an image when you're moving. Or, I'm sorry, side imaging gives you a picture when you're moving. 360 is for when you're stationary. So if you're sitting in one spot, side imaging isn't going to give you a very good picture because it needs to be moving to put those slices together to create that picture-like image, where the 360 transducer, as it pans, it gives you that picture. So stationary 360, moving side imaging, but a very similar image, like you said.
Makes sense. Can you talk a little bit about how you like to utilize live and 360 at the same time, how they work together to give you a better picture of what's down there?
So what I use it for, like my favorite way to fish is fishing isolated targets. And say there's a stump field, right? And I've got 5 or 6 particular stumps marked that I'm going to catch fish on. With that 360, I can keep those, have a slice of my 360 screen with my map, and then I'll have my 360 on there. So I can organize those targets with my 360 and then pick it apart with my forward facing. So, if I've got multiple targets, it's just way easier in my mind to know which ones I've hit and which ones I still need to hit. And I did that before live scope. That's how I used to fish. I would pull up on a flat and I would have 4 of them on the 360, but instead of taking me 6 casts to hit it with only the 360, now I can bounce my jig off it with the live scope in 1 or 2 casts. So it's a lot more efficient. So they're awesome when paired together. I mean, you're so much more efficient.
Yeah, I believe that. I've never fished with both of them at the same time, but like I've mostly grasped the concept of it, and it's like, yeah, you can be pretty dang efficient if you
you're
can
missing
fully
out
utilize both.
Yeah, if you don't like, and especially the way it goes, that goes back to side imaging too, right? Like I'll idle and I'll mark a brush pile, and then that brush pile, that waypoint is going to show up on my map up front because I've got everything Ethernetted together. And then as I approach it on my map, that waypoint will also show up on my 360 screen. And that's something a lot of people don't realize about 360 is you can actually get your waypoints to display right on the 360 view. So it will show the waypoint. Say there's 3 stumps and there's only one of them you want to fish, it will show the waypoint on your 360 screen. A lot of people don't realize this.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's so many of my buddies, I try to explain it to them, like, well, how do you do that? And it's a really simple setting in your menu, and then it'll display your waypoint. So now I know, okay, see it on my map, see it on my 360, pan with my forward facing. Yep, there it is. Cast, see my jig fall. No, I'm 4 feet short, reel it up, cast. All right, I'm going to fall right on the front side of it. You can feather your bait right exactly where you want. That's where you save a lot of time throughout a day, especially a tournament day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
when seconds count.
Yeah, when you think about just efficiency in an 8-hour tournament day, if you save 5 casts on every target and you're fishing 50 targets in a day, that's a lot of extra casts. So that's what it boils down to for me, is just efficiency. In my mind, like I said, I understand what I'm seeing on 360, what I'm seeing on side imaging, what I'm seeing on forward facing, and it's really easy for me to piece it all together because I've used all the technologies, from when they started. Like side imaging I've used since it came out, 360 since it came out. So I understood those 2 technologies very well. And then I learned live scope, and I'm like, oh my God, this is like a dream scenario, because the more efficient you can be, the more fish you're going to catch, the more opportunities you're going to have to win a tournament.
Mm-hmm. I feel like these rule changes you're probably happy about, because this seems to be like right in your wheelhouse now.
Well, when I qualified for the elites, that's how a big reason why I did it, or why I did it in 1 year, is because a lot of the people, the opens, Bassmaster opens, there was 150 to 200 boats in these tournaments. I'd never been on the lakes, but I knew like forward facing sonar was just getting going in 2020 when I qualified.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people just didn't have it. And B, a lot of people who did have it, they didn't know what they were doing with it. They had it on their boat, so they felt like, they had it or whatever. But like, I knew that, like, okay, I'm going to catch fish behind most of these people because I see how they're fishing. And not everybody, obviously a lot of people, some people still did know, but it's not like today's world where if you bass fish or walleye fish or panfish, like you probably have a pretty good idea what forward facing sonar is and how to use it.
Mm-hmm.
2020, that wasn't the case.
Yep.
So, and I understood the other technologies. There's the same thing with side imaging and 360. I took the time to learn how to run it and learn what I was looking at and learn how to utilize it. A lot of people buy the stuff and they get bored because they don't figure it out right away. And then they just go back to fishing in their old ways. And that's not how to get ahead in the end, and that was always my edge in local tournaments. And like I said, making the elite series in 1 year through 2 different avenues in the same year, a lot of that was just because, I understood the technologies better than the majority of the people I was fishing against at that time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. For the people that like just bought forward facing sonar and haven't used it, what are some of those things that people will commonly do wrong or like not know?
Well, there's several of them, but the first thing is just getting it set up properly. Having adequate power is a major problem for a lot of people. I don't get as many calls about it now because lithium batteries, the technology is just like, it's not quite the standard yet, but it is going to be. So a lot of times when people would say they can't see what they're looking at, their image isn't very good, it's because they didn't have adequate power is one of the first issues. And then the second thing, or probably the biggest thing, is like people think you just like put this thing on your boat and you go out there and you see a fish and you cast your bait and you see your bait and then they bite it. Like, it's just not that simple. There's a lot of intricacies to understanding, how to make an accurate cast and how to get your bait to show up. A lot of people want to put the range so far out there because they just want to see all the way across the lake. Start at 100 feet, use most of the time. I use just the factory settings on it, with Garmin anyways. Now I've got one of the new Mega Live 2s, but I haven't got that dialed in yet. But on a Garmin, turn the thing on and don't go in and mess with a bunch of stuff. 75 to 100 foot range. I like to manually adjust the depth range. I don't like the auto. I don't like it jumping all over the place. And I'll usually set it where 2/3 of the screen is the water column and the bottom third is the bottom. That's kind of where I like it. So if I'm in 40 foot of water, I'll have my depth range set at 40 feet. If I'm in 30 feet of water, that's how I like to do it. And then just go out and mess around. Don't go out and think you're going to catch all kinds of fish. Go out and just practice casting into the cone angle and understand what your distances are. You see a fish at 50 feet, know how to cast 50 feet. See what baits show up better on there. Learn that kind of stuff before you go out and just think you're going to catch every fish. Because that's not how it works. And just understanding the basics. The first 2 or 3 days you go out, just spend the time doing that before you worry about catching a bunch of fish. And that'll get you a lot further than coming in frustrated because you didn't get a bite in 10 hours of fishing because you didn't take the time to learn, what you were looking at.
Absolutely. I think that's a great piece of advice. And I think that's something that's super difficult for a lot of people to do, like just devoting time to like learning the piece of equipment and understanding all the ins and outs. I mean, I know you get the thing hooked up to your boat and you just want to go catch a pile of fish with it, but like play with the settings, like get used to all of it, understand what you're seeing, make a goal of making a 50-foot cast and seeing how close you can actually get to it. And then once it's game time, then you're just going to be that much more prepared for it. So I like that a lot.
Yeah. And it sounds simple, but like, we're in a day and age where everybody wants like instant gratification. They want to go out and just like all of a sudden I can catch every fish. But it's like, there's a reason that the people that have been doing it for longer, if they took the time once again to learn it, like we just talked about, there's a reason that they're going to be better than you right away. But if you just practice and then all of a sudden it'll start to come together and you'll start to understand the little things and, what a stump looks like, what grass looks like, that if there's a clump of grass and, there's a fish next to that. And now, then you start to put it all together. And once it clicks, then it's fun.
Oh,
when
absolutely.
When you're first learning, it's frustrating. You're like, oh, dang it. I think I saw my bait, but I'm not sure. And then, oh yeah, there it is. And now I can't find, and you're trying to stand with your motor, unless you have it on a pole, you're trying to track it. Like it takes some time. It takes some time to get that dialed in.
Absolutely. So, I mean, everybody's got their own journey with that. And like, I've used forward facing sonar quite a bit over the past 4 years, but mostly it's like through the ice, cause I never had like a really good pole set up or never had it attached to the trolling motor or anything like that. But through the ice, like you definitely have a journey and a learning curve. Like I spend a lot of time chasing bass and crappie with it. And just when I figured out like, okay, that's a school of crappie versus that's a school of perch versus that's a school of bait fish, and like learning how the fish like move and interpreting that to like their mood throughout that specific day, like that tool becomes so incredibly powerful and so fun to fish with.
It really is. And that's the thing. Like if they all of a sudden took it away from us, like just to like know what you're missing now that you've seen it, like you said, just seeing how a fish moves or reacts to a bait or to your boat, or if you shut your lid a little too hard, or your buddy shuts the lid a little too hard on the boat and you see the fish scoot away. Like there's all that stuff that you didn't know before. And the other thing, especially with like fishing a jerkbait, and I can't even imagine, like I don't musky fish, but like how many fish follow your bait on a cast that you would never know that without forward facing sonar. Not even if you don't even see, like say the fish are coming off the bottom where you can't see them really on forward facing. Like you'll just be fishing a jerkbait and you'll have one follow it to within 20 feet of the boat and then turn and go away. Well, you would never know that. So you think you're not around fish, where in reality, like, well, yeah, they're just not biting. Maybe if you change the color of your jerkbait, then they might bite. Every once in a while you have a fish follow to the boat and you're like, oh, dang, there was one. But now you're like, I've had 10 of them follow in the last 20 casts and I can't get them to bite. So those are things that really help you learn too, is not always catching the fish, but just seeing how they react. I'm same with ice fishing. I mean, you kind of had it with a Vexlar where they would follow a color. You'd see them chase it, and then you'd put a different color on or pick up a different, a plastic versus a waxy, and then you'd catch them. But like in traditional open water fishing, you didn't really have that other than maybe 2D sonar right beneath the boat. I mean, it just gives you so much information.
Yeah, it's really crazy. I think one of my favorite instances with forward facing sonar is like taking it up to Lake Winnipeg ice fishing and like watching how the fish interact with your bait. And like, especially like those prime bite windows, you could like see a fish slide in and then move off the bottom a bit and then like circle around and like flare their fins and then attack it. That's the coolest thing in the world.
It's so fun. And that, the people that are against it, it's like, you just, I don't know, you just so much more interaction, when you're using it in a lot of cases. Just to see that in like, I don't know, it's so cool just to see fish's behavior and how they react to things. And I can't imagine like having that getting taken away now and then just guessing, it's
yeah. And I mean, like
in certain scenarios.
Yeah, for sure. And, the biggest gripe about it is like, oh, it's going to destroy the fishery. But, when you fish with it enough and you like desire that level of knowledge to know how the fish interact under there, like, is that guy really want to destroy the fishery? No way.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. I listened to a little snippet of one of the other podcasts you did. I can't remember the kid's name. I think he's from North Dakota. He's just like
probably Jaden from the Fargo store.
Yeah, I mean, he's just like a machine, like intense. And he said like technology's not destroying the fisheries; it's people are gonna, or something like that. Fishermen will.
Exactly.
Like, the people that are like meat hunters and aren't necessarily the most respectful to the resource, those are the ones that are gonna, and yes, forward facing sonar will help them to be more efficient at keeping their limit every single day so they can tell their buddies they caught their limit every single day. But like you said, most of the people that like me and you that want to see that, I mean, I keep very, very few fish every year. I like to catch them. So I don't think it's there was a time when everybody said a flasher was going to destroy the fisheries too. And it's more people respect the resource than people who don't respect it. So I don't think it's going to kill every fish in the lake magically.
Yeah. And, states are going to study that. They're going to create different regulations if it is vastly altering the fish populations and things like that.
Yeah. And and that's the thing too, is like there very well could be more to it. But you don't really know, how do you know?
There's just so many variables out there.
Yeah, there really is. And then like, we'll just have to wait and see if they have these, research teams that come up with all this information, which, a lot of that can be subjective too. So what's the accuracy going to be? I mean, I'm just gonna keep using it as long as I can and enjoying it while I can use it.
Absolutely. So just kind of circling back to like the tournament trail when they were using 6 different sonars on the boat. How much does that like affect the fish? Cause I mean, if you're getting pinged by 6 different sonars, I mean, they gotta be like at a point where they just turn off, right?
Maybe, but I've maybe seen a few scenarios where if you're in a group of multiple people fishing a school of fish, that they can get maybe a little sensitive to it. But I think some of that is a fallacy too. I think that a lot of people, like, if they can't get them to bite, they say like it's because of the sonar pinging. I mean, I don't know though. You can't ask a fish if they, if it makes them not want to bite. I mean, I possibly it affects them, but if you find a fresh school of fish, they're gonna bite a lot of times, whether it's, you find them with you hit them with side imaging, you hit them with 2 live scope transducers. I mean, if they're biting, they're probably gonna bite regardless. So I don't have a good answer for that. I've used it a lot, obviously, and I can't think of very many scenarios where I like panned my transducer and hit a fish and it like swam away. Like I haven't seen that a lot. I really can't think of any scenarios where I've seen that. I mean, maybe there's been some, but I don't think that's as big of a factor as what some people make it out to be. I could be wrong, but that's just my personal experience from thousands of hours of using it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it can definitely be different scenarios. So like I've done some ice fishing where I believed that, it probably scared them away, but that was like when it was in down mode and I was just strictly just hitting them the entire time. And then they didn't really like it. But, at the same time, barometric pressure probably has a bigger effect than a sonar wave at them too.
Yeah. Or like, would it be like if you knew the fish were there, did you turn it off and then they bit?
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, I don't know. I don't know
that?
if it's that fish.
That's the thing. Like, can you catch the fish and say like, hey, did you feel that? You can't do that. That's the thing, is like people are all of a sudden like experts on all that, where it's like they've been getting hit with sonar beams for 70 or however long, 50 years. I mean, how many fish have swam under a flasher? I mean, you can, that thing pulses just like a forward facing sonar. Granted, it's not as far out, but like, I don't know. I think a lot of times it's people maybe use that as an excuse as why they can't get them to bite when they're just not biting. They're just not biting. And like I said, I can't think of all the fish, whether it was walleyes or largemouth or smallmouth, where I've been panning and being like, oh, there's one, and it just swims out of there, or even turns around. Like most time, if they're gonna spook, it's when your bait hits the water, and you land it a little too close to them, then they might spook. But I can't think of honestly any scenarios where I've hit them with the beam and they just like boogied out of there.
Okay. So you've never felt the need to like, okay, I've located this fish, I need to move the beam away from it when I cast so I don't spook
No,
them.
I'm on that thing. Yeah. Cause I've got it on trolling motor. So like, ice fishing is different, but out on a boat, like if they're swimming right to left, okay, now I got to keep scanning the beam left and right so I can figure out which angle away it's swimming. Okay, all right, now I got it. And then I kind of get the track on it. Well, then I got to line up my cast out in front of it, so I got to scan forward and back and try to figure out where I need to have the head of the motor to line up. So yeah, I'm on it 99% of the time. Like I said, unless I'm panning a little out in front of it to line up my cast. That's the art to it. That's the art to it. Is getting that bait to fall in that window where it's going to bite, not behind them. If they're swimming towards you, it's fairly easy, but it's like shooting a bird, like shooting a duck. Like you can't just you got to figure out where it's going to be, not where it's at.
Yeah.
So, that's the beam is on that thing the majority of the time.
Okay.
It's not like I'm like, okay, there he is, pan it over this way, then cast, because I don't know where my cast is. Like, I got to see what happens when that fish sees my bait.
Mm-hmm.
So I can, A, know if it's a catchable fish, B, just see how it reacted to it. Did it chase it? Did I miss it by 2 feet? Did it not see it? Like, there's all that stuff that I need the beam to be on it to see them, to see what the fish does and what my bait does.
Gotcha. Interesting. So I got a question for you. So one thing I've never really quite understood how to execute is, so you've got your forward facing sonar on the trolling motor and you're in deeper water. So you can't put like your talons down or nothing. And it's like kind of windy. So your boat's moving. Like how do you navigate sharpshooting a fish offshore like that?
Practice.
Practice.
A lot of practice. Yep. And other tools too. So, I like to fish into the wind when possible, but a lot of times when we get out on like, say Lake Champlain, where you're out on a big flats and you got to cover water to find these fish. If it's super windy, like you just can't efficiently fish into the wind because you just won't be able to cover enough ground. So then what you do, you get going with the wind and you use your shallow water anchors on the back of the boat. If you see a fish or a group of fish, you put them down and it'll slow you down quite a bit. And then I don't know if you've seen the power pole drift paddles. You know what those are?
Not exactly. And I'm guessing a few viewers don't. So can you explain them?
Okay, so a power pole drift paddle is it's like a drift sock. You put them on your power poles on the back of the boat, and it's basically like a flat piece of like plasticky, I don't even know, like not wood, but like a durable material, right? And you turn them so they're perpendicular to your power poles. And when you put them down, I've tested it where I'll be going like 1.5 miles an hour with the wind. When I put them down, it instantly drops your speed to like 0.4.
Oh, dang.
Like I'm talking almost, it is insane how much it slows you down. Like you could be on 10 with your trolling motor just going and you put them down. It's just like someone dropped an anchor in the back of the boat. So then that gives you more time to react and line up. It might give you an extra 2 casts. So I just started using those 2 years ago. I always had them and I'm like, I don't need those things. And then I put them on and it's open water. It is crazy what they do. And then when you're done, you just put them up and you keep going. You see another fish, boom, put them down. So that's a big tool for open water also. That helps with that sharpshooting.
Yep.
Because if you're just drifting with the wind and you see a fish, you're like, oh, there he is. Well, by the time you get ready, he's under the boat. Well, now this will give you that time to react.
Nice.
So, yep. That's one way, but then it's practice, dude. You got to go out and do it and just go. And you're going to mess up a lot of them. But then, when all of a sudden you figure out the angle when they're swimming left to right to left, coming towards you, going away from you, there's days where it's like you feel like you can't miss because you're that dialed in.
That's awesome. I'm very glad I asked that question now. So those paddles that do they come with the power poles or do you have to buy them as like a separate attachment?
You add them, they're separate. But the nice thing is, so like down here in Florida, I don't have them on. Like if I'm up in the grass and all that, I don't put them on. But once you install them, there's a bracket that stays on the top of the pole. They're super easy. Once you have it installed, which takes like maybe 20 minutes to install both of them, you can just pull a pin and take the paddle off and the bracket stays on there. So it's like the next time you go to put it on, it literally takes 2 minutes to do it. It's just, they're so cool. And I've never seen them up like where I'm from in northern Wisconsin. I've never seen them on anybody's boat. And now like I show up at these tournaments with it and starting to see a couple of them now because people are realizing what they can do.
Yeah. Word travels fast, especially in the era with social media.
Yeah. Yes.
Speaking of social media, how has that journey been? Like how you've grown your channel and what you enjoy or don't enjoy of it?
You know, like social media is kind of like a necessary evil. There's things I really like about it, and there's things I don't like about it. Like I love seeing other people's bucks they shoot and birds and seeing all the fish catches and these cool videos that people put up. But it's really easy to be negative on there too.
Mm-hmm.
So I've tried to stay away from the negative stuff. Like you don't see me say too many really any negative things. I might give my opinion, but I try not to be negative towards a certain group of people or whatever, whether it's the anti-live scopers. This is my opinion. But it's just one of those things that I enjoy it because I get to just see other people's success and I get to learn a lot from it. But I'm still learning a lot about it. I don't have a ton of followers. I've grown it a lot in the last few years, which I'm proud of for what I've done. But I got a long ways to go to get up to the numbers of some of these people I'm fishing against.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's, if we didn't have social media, I wouldn't have a job for one. And two, if I didn't have it, I wouldn't get to see those short clips of you doing your ninja moves.
Yeah, those keep popping up somehow. I thought it kind of faded out last year, and then you think it's kind of gone away, and then Mercer will bring it up again, and then it'll get fired back up. So, yeah, that was just that's turned into more than what I thought it would, but whatever, it's cool. People like it.
Hey, I think it's glorious, and I'm curious if you've come up with any new ones for this year.
No, I'm kind of like a freestyle ninja,
like a spur of the moment kind of guy.
Yeah, whatever comes to my head. We'll just kind of do some spinny kicks and ninja chops and duty chops, and hopefully it's not too ridiculous.
Oh, love it. I love it. So, okay, cool, Pat. Well, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate all the knowledge. Like that forward-facing sonar talk was super cool. I learned a bunch on this one, and it's good to like get a better understanding of all the rules and regulations. And I think they're working towards something that's going to be good for everyone.
I think so too. I mean, now you've got really three different options and there's three main leagues out there, right? There's the Elite Series, which has the rules that I just described. And then you have the NPFL, the National Professional Fishing League. They completely banned it. So there's no forward-facing sonar in that. And then you have the Major League Fishing. The Bass Pro Tour, they can use it for like part of the day, and part of the day they can't. So this year is going to be like a big. People are gonna see what works, because it comes down to like, for them, it's about viewership.
Mm-hmm.
What do people want to watch? And like a lot of people try to say that Bass's numbers were not good last year because of all the forward-facing sonar, but it was a record year for them. Like their viewership was better than it ever has been. So, this year will be a big proving ground to see what sticks. And if they got to adjust it next year, they'll adjust it again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it progresses for sure. So I tell you what, I'm looking forward to it. It'll be fun following you in your journey and seeing how things go.
Yeah, hopefully I can keep going and keep at it and win enough money to keep her going. That's the goal, is just, keep being able to do it for as long as I can. I've done well enough where I shouldn't have to worry about not qualifying again. Now it's just trying to make a living at it for as long as I want to do it. And it's a pretty fun way to make a living when it works.
Oh, absolutely. I could think of a lot worse ways to spend your day. That's for sure.
Yep. That's true.
I want to hear about these blocks blinds in your hunting property, what you've been doing. Okay.
Well, so basically, I've always traditionally hunted out of hang-on stands. I really like the Millennium M100 hang-ons. But this year I hunted with my little nephew, and they would always get cold, go in, would only be able to make it for an hour or two. So I bought a Banks blind, a two-man Banks blind, and set it up on our farm, and we both shot bucks out of it this year sitting together. So it was awesome because we had a heater going, we had the nice SCHEELS chairs, and we sat all day the first day, which was, he's 12 years old, so that was a long day for him. And we loved it. So now we bought 2 more of them. So we got 2 more going up there, and we'll probably end up getting another 1 or 2, but I think we're going to shut her down for now because they're not super cheap.
No, they're definitely not. But yeah, they can be real game changers just from a comfort perspective. And for me, like a scent perspective too.
Oh, yeah.
Like if you get an ozonics and you open up one window and leave everything else shut and just run that ozonics out, you can literally like hunt and not care about the wind. Cause like I've had setups where I've designed it like the way I hunt it, where I hunt it on days where the wind is blowing into the bedding area and I'm hunting a field, and I get in there and I shut everything and just run the ozonics, and like deer won't care. They're like, oh, I can scent check the field so I feel safe because there's nothing in there. But like really you're actually there. You're just like literally fooling their noses.
So which ones do you hunt out of?
I've actually hunted out of quite a few different ones. Like we've got a couple that are like cheap ones. There's one redneck, a muddy, and a Banks one. So they're all very similar, and they're all like very effective.
Yeah, and it's just like being able to move around and like not. I don't know. It was awesome. I've never hunted out of one other than we had like one like for my grandpa that we built, but it's not the same. I mean, it's nice, but like those things you get in that stump blind, and I don't know, it's awesome. You can move around, you can stand up and stretch a little bit, you can mess around on your phone, and then if they come out 75 yards away, I mean, they don't know you're there. So you got all the time in the world, and not every scenario, but with a rifle anyways, I mean, you can be like, oh yeah, take my time, turn, get over there. It's just way different than sitting in a little hang-on stand. So,
oh, absolutely.
I still will hunt out of a hang-on too in a lot of scenarios, just because a lot of the places were on our property, like I'm not getting a Banks blind back there.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, definitely. I've even done like sound tests with them too. Like I'll have one on a food plot, and I'll wait till deer get out to like 50 yards or so, and I'll have all the windows and the door closed and stuff, and I'll like go like, hey, and I'll like progressively get louder and like wait until like I find where they actually like pick their head up or recognize something. And it's crazy the level of noise you can get away with when you have everything closed.
Oh yeah, I know. Like the one, my nephew shot a pretty nice one. Like for our property, it was a pretty good buck, and it was 50 yards away. And he was quiet, but he's getting his gun out the window, and like I'm like cringing the whole time because it's right there, and it had no clue. So it was fun. I said I'm getting old, and rifle season I try to sit all day, as many days as I can, and I would sit up in that hang on, but now I just relax in the stump blind, and
for sure
it's fun. Yep.
And there's a lot to those all day sits too. Like I just shot my biggest buck I ever shot at 1:00 in the afternoon this rifle season. Like he just came out of a secluded bedding area, had no idea. He was walking with the wind instead of the wind in his face at 1 PM. I don't know if he was just like shifting to a different bedding area or whatever, but like I never would have saw that deer if I went and took a lunch break.
Yeah. And like the biggest one I ever shot was at 12:30. This was like 4 years ago. It was at like 12:30 in the afternoon, and my brother and my nephews had gotten out of that other stand when we built one for my grandpa, and kicked it up to me. Like, that's how I shot it. And I told Leif, my nephew, I was like, well, we can either sit in here or you can go to the cabin and sit in the cabin for 2 hours and then come back out. But you're not going to see them if you're sitting in the cabin.
Mm-hmm.
So do you want to sit here or do you want to sit in the cabin? Well, we'll just stay sitting here. So, that's how you learn is almost all the big bucks that I've seen in rifle season, with a couple exceptions, have been in that midday period. Why? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know why on a few of them, but it's just like, I don't know if they're just used to that. Like, people aren't in the woods from 11 to 2 o'clock. And so that's when they run around, but it's, you're not going to shoot them if you're not out there.
Yep. Absolutely. So
yeah, I love it. I've kind of got revamped on, like, I haven't bow hunted still for 4 years just because of my schedule. But now that I'm not going to be working at the store anymore, like, I'll buy another bow, and I've been buying a lot of rifles and shotguns, and just because I've spent a ton of time in the woods this year, grouse hunting and pheasant hunting and deer hunting. So it's I really, really enjoy being in the woods.
Awesome. Well, good for you to be able to find that time.
I've got, that's, I always joke with my buddies. It's like, God dang it, I don't know. It's going to be a little cold. I don't know if I should go pheasant hunting or grouse hunting tomorrow. And they're like, well, I'm going to work. So what are you talking about? Like, yeah, I know, it's kind of tough.
They probably don't have much sympathy for you in that.
No. Yeah. Or if I'm like, God dang, it's a little too windy. I don't think I'm going to be able to bird hunt today. I'll just go tomorrow. And it's Tuesday, like, I really enjoyed this was the first year where I've actually had a legit off season, because when the season got done, I would work at the store quite a bit because it was fun. I do miss it, but now that I got to get back out and grouse hunt again and pheasant hunt again and just go scouting just walking around the woods, scouting for deer and getting that blind set up and cutting shooting lanes and just like talking about what to do for food plots and like that's just so much fun.
Yeah, there's just something therapeutic about that.
Yeah, and it's not like, fishing for me is therapeutic too, but it's different now that it's my job. Like, it's still great. I love it. I'm super thankful. But like hunting, it's just pure, it's all about the process of doing everything and just enjoying it. Like, I went a lot of days pheasant hunting and grouse hunting where I didn't shoot anything, but I loved it. It was so fun getting out and working with my dog. I just would rather do that than most other things.
Absolutely. So, all right, cool. Well, thanks, Pat. Appreciate it.
All right.
Hey, you have a good season. All right. We'll be rooting for you.
I'm going to try to win. I don't think Gearwood will ever let it down if I don't ever win one. He was pretty bummed last year in that first one. I think he thought I was bringing the blue trophy to Fargo, but
oh man, yeah, we saw you like climbing up that leaderboard and was like, oh man, he might get it on this one.
Yeah, I still lose a little sleep over it, but wasn't meant to be.
Hey, there's next time.
Yep.